My dudes, what's happening, man? This is Trent, and a question came in today from Zainep Serinker. Oh boy. Zainep Serinker. And he says, hey, Trent, what happens when you feel stuck on a project? You're halfway through it, but suddenly you realize it just doesn't feel good enough. It feels like just nowhere near the quality that you want it to be. What do? Do you finish the project? Do you can it? Do you start over? Do you keep reworking it? What's the plan? How do you handle something like that? Well, I'm glad you asked me, because you guys know I'm the king of finishing stuff. That's what I do. Right out of the gate, the first thing I'm going to tell you is just finish that sucker up. Just finish it, man, because finished is better than being great. 99% of artists fail because they just never finish a thing. Same with writers and a lot of other people who pursue a challenging career path in a creative field or anything that is hard to attain. Most people just quit. So if you finish, at least then you're 10 steps ahead of the game. And after you finish your project, then you can evaluate. Then you can go through with your list of things that you could do. Literally make a list and go, okay, so what was missing here? What could be better? Let's say that you wrote a short comic, okay? So it's only 12 pages, but you put that up there on like a web comics web page or something like that, and you're looking at it and you're like, wow, people read the first 1 to 2, 3 pages, but then they stop. What happened? That kind of a metric is your feedback. That's some very valuable information. That tells you something. It tells you an item on your list should be, dude, make a pop-in intro. Get people excited about the characters. Get them invested. That way you can make a list of things that you can learn how to do better, and you can apply that to the next version. Bam! That's how you're growing. This is the whole system. I built my whole career around exactly this process. My first comic books were not great, but you know what? They were finished and they went to print. I'm not exactly proud of them. I'm somewhat embarrassed of them. But when people who aren't me look at it, a lot of times they say, oh no, hey, that was a pretty good looking comic. Not by my standards, but by their standards. So if you have really high standards for your own work, it can be detrimental if you never allow yourself to release anything, but it can also be really good benefit if you can let go. So it's good to have high standards for your work, but be able to let go and put it out there and say, it's flawed, but it's still good. You know what I mean? And that's the same thing. If you think about it, it's the same kind of confidence that you have when you go into a social situation. Right? Like you're confident of your words. You're not second guessing everything you're saying. You're just having a fluid conversation with people. Your environment of creating content, I guess we'd call it your loop of creating content and putting it out into the world is something that you're always refining. It's something you're always paying attention to how to make it better, but you never stop the loop. You never stop finishing and releasing product. You never stop finishing and releasing content that then you can evaluate and say, how do I make that better? I made an indie game last year, and I've got a list of things. If I ever do another indie game, don't do it this way. Add this kind of features. Make sure that you add this kind of a gameplay element, that sort of a thing. You want to be paying attention to and evaluating the product as a whole without stopping yourself to second guess yourself. That's the worst thing you can do. So when I was doing comic books, I ran into this a lot where when you're doing a comic book, a lot of times you just have to do a page a day, okay? And so if there's a panel or something that's off, a lot of times you don't get time to fix that. Now, if you're very fortunate and you've scheduled out your project, you usually do schedule an extra week at the very end of a project to go in and make those adjustments. But for the most part, you don't want to keep second guessing yourself. And you know, companies like Blizzard go through this all the time. I'm going to give you even more anecdotes because when we were working on Diablo 3, for example, it was a 5-year development cycle. It was technically longer, but we didn't really have a development team for till about the last 5 years. And for the first 3 years of that was all blue sky. So it was just experimenting. It was like, hey, do we want the art style to look like this? Do we want gameplay to look like that? What kind of armor designs? What kind of dungeons? What kind of bosses? And it was really just trying a lot of things, and we threw out a lot of work. But we were in what you call the blue sky phase. And Blizzard had the ability to budget an extra 3 years just to do that. Once we got into the development phase, everything was scheduled down to the week. So we knew we would have X number of armor sets done by week 25. You know what I mean? Or this dungeon or that dungeon would be finished by this specific date. And as long as we stuck to that schedule, we really didn't have a chance to rework things until the very last couple of months. And that's sort of when like a lot of other parts of the development are done. So they schedule like the last couple of months to just go in and fix any inconsistencies and any problems and maybe rework that boss fight, or really just fine tune and add those extra levels of polish. They had that scheduled in with the whole development timeline. Schedules are super important, especially to artists, because we'll just keep reworking things infinitely. It's never good enough. But how does this relate to your project and what you're doing? Let's say that you're making a comic book. Stick to your schedule, plan it out to like go, okay, so this is going to be a 2-month development time on this comic book. Okay, so week number 1 and 2, I'm laying out the story and the storyboards and the page thumbs so that you've got a plan in place so that on week 5, for instance, which pages you're going to be working on, and they are scheduled to be finished before the end of that week, no matter how good they are. If you hate them, it doesn't matter. They're going in the book. But as long as you got that extra week maybe at the end of your schedule, you could maybe go back in and make some adjustments and move panels or fix something. But for the most part, you just got to finish it. Finished is more important than being great. And some people don't like schedules. Some people, even at Blizzard, were like, we don't want to constrain you with limitations. And it's like, limitations actually bring out a lot of great things. Mask of Majora is one of the greatest Zelda games ever made, and it was built in less than 12 months. Because they had technical restraints and schedule restrictions, it forced them to make decisions and not second guess themselves. With artists especially, you need a schedule. And if you're just getting started out, it's important to remember, it's just art, man. It's just comics, it's just games, it's just indie stuff. It's just art. It's not gonna change the damn world. So stop beating yourself up over how good it's supposed to be. Finish it and make the next one better. Anyway, that's my advice, but, some people look at my work and go, wow, you never did anything good anyway, so whatever, and you could write me off that way. But hey, at least I'm finishing stuff, and I finish a lot of stuff. In fact, I'm finishing up an art book. This is The World of Twilight Monk, Volume 2. You've been watching me paint on it throughout this whole video, and this is a collection of behind-the-scenes bios and environments for The World of Twilight Monk. The first one's already available in paperback or digital PDF. Follow the links on the screen to pick that up yourself. And dudes, until next time, I'll catch y'all. Manya and Daban. And ciao, baby. Oh yeah! Got that Kool-Aid, man.